another episode of Conversations, the show where we open a can of worms into topics that there's a lot of depth in. And a lot of times in today's day and age, we look at these big societal challenges and big business problems, and we think, I want to take that 1 hour conversation class with Tracy and Jackie and have all the answers. Unfortunately, that's not a thing. And so at the Conversation Show, this is where we defy that and we give ourselves the opportunity to get curious, ask questions, explore our own rivers of thinking and where that might be limiting us, and explore some new ways to think. And today we have a topic that is going to do just that, because we're talking about questions. And this was really cool because I was having a conversation with Jackie. We were talking about questions. And I mean, there's lots of arenas in which you can ask questions, right? And there's probably many questions we all get asked on a day-to-day basis. My number one being, what's for dinner? And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of answering that question. Hey, Kim. Kim might also be tired of answering that question. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the show. But when we ask questions, how intentional are we being with our questions? And if we're in an arena of trying to create connection, which is what we're talking about today, are our questions facilitating that? Or are our questions maybe taking us farther away from that? Or are we not even asking any questions that can't possibly getting us closer to that? Anyway, we're going to open all of the doors to this part of the conversation today and explore questions. Hey, Yasmin, welcome to the show. And for everyone who's watching, if you're new to the show or if you're old to the show, welcome back. Welcome back. This is a conversation for all of us. And so anybody watching, if you have questions about questions, or how you can ask questions for connections, or something that you've experienced that really allowed you to connect through answering a question, please share that, because this gives us an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other. And we want to learn from you as much as you want to learn from us. So let's all work together today to ask awesome questions to each other. Although, thanks, Andrew. Why am I so awesome? Because I ask awesome questions. Let's make that the answer for today. Good morning, Dan. Always good to see you, my friend. So before we get too deep into the conversation, let's learn a little bit more about Jackie, a lovely guest for today. So Jackie, tell us a little bit more about you and why questions for connection is something that is so important to you right now. Or maybe always.
Thank you, Tracy. You know what? My son is now 31 years old, living on his own. So I don't get asked that question. I'm the one who asks myself that question. What's for dinner? It's like, so, and I kind of get sick of asking myself that question too, to be honest. Why this topic is important to me. I have always been a curious creature. My entire life has been driven by curiosity ever since I was a young kid. I always wanted to explore what was out there, and went into journalism when I left high school. And funny story is, my journalism teacher, for those of you who've been told you talk too much in class, I was actually told by my journalism teacher, you ask too many questions. You ask too many questions, right? Which, you know, really kind of held me back sometimes in other situations, going into business situations, meetings in boardrooms. I always had this like filter of like, am I asking too many questions? And I'm done with that. Like, I am over it, been to therapy for it. It's cleared, it's gone. I can ask all the questions I want now. But my exploration really took a deep dive when I was working in the world of media in 2010, for up to a decade by that time. And I decided to leave and go to India and study yoga and meditation and Eastern philosophy, a little bit of an eat, pray, love move, because I was curious. You know, the question was like, what more is out there? But also, what more is there inside of me? So when it comes to questions, I think it's so important to get curious, to create human connection with others, especially in leadership roles. But that has to start with getting curious about your own self and asking those hard questions more often than not. I've been coaching for over a decade, since 2010. I've led over a dozen women's retreats and workshops around the world. And I never cease getting tired of meeting people and asking them questions that help me learn more about them, that go deeper than like, hey, how are you? What do you do?
Oh, I love going deeper than that.
Yeah.
And we have some people who are jamming with you with the question asking. Michelle says, hey, I ask so many questions, never too many.
Yes, keep asking them, Michelle.
And Karen, welcome. We have, I think, unfortunately, I don't think this is uncommon, Jackie, this people having been told that they ask too many questions, and the phrases like curiosity killed the cat, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'll just sit here and not ask questions. And I've always felt like that. It was very unnatural to me that I really had to hold back and do that. And there were times, like I actually had a physics professor who made me sit under the fire blanket in class because I was asking too many questions. And it was really interesting because at that point, I shut down my relationship with that teacher, but I also shut down my relationship to physics. And it was just this like really interesting moment in time where like I remember my curiosity being squashed, and it broke the relationship with all of the things that were even remotely close to the space. So like, before we jump into like asking those questions for connection, do you have any advice? Because you've been through the journey too. Like what type of things can help us get back into the question asking curiosity zone when we feel like we've been maybe restricted by other people or other systems?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that had to happen to you. That's just horrible. Under the fire blanket.
Although it's a very good, relevant personal branding story now, which I'm glad I have
absolutely.
it. But
absolutely. You know, like when you think of the world of questions, there are questions to create connection. There are questions to allow us to enter into a state of self-exploration. And then there are clarifying questions to really ensure we understood correctly. And, you know, especially in work environments, the way that my very unique brain works is I need to ask a lot of clarifying questions to make sure that I understood what was said to me, right? So that I'm super, super clear. And, you know, if we have been in a position where we have felt less than, when we have felt almost that energy of you're being annoying.
You know, Kim has a comment right here saying I was in the way.
Yeah. Yep. Taking up too much time, right? Like, and then that causes you to go away with unanswered questions or feeling dismissed, right? Feeling completely dismissed, which is not a good feeling. I believe that, you know, how we can get back into it, first of all, find someone that you know you're safe with asking questions to. And that could actually be strangers, right? That could be strangers. So for example, if I'm at the grocery store and, you know, the woman at Safeway or the man at Safeway says, you know, how are you? Okay. Well, we all know the answer to that question. Like that question is, to me, a close-ended question. It's like, fine, good, I'm okay. Like it's a boring question, to be honest. But I experiment by asking them, tell me what the best part of your day has been so far. And it surprises them a little bit, but then they get this kind of smile on their face and they respond. And it's a great way to just practice asking questions that foster getting to know someone and helping them feel seen. That then actually opens the door for them to ask a more meaningful question. So you actually, in a way, are, I don't want to use the word educating, but you're bringing awareness to others that there are more questions than how are you, how's your day, what do you do? So I would suggest if you feel a little intimidated by asking questions, start asking questions to strangers and just see how it feels. And then when you're in, you know, your everyday life, take these questions to the people in your life, the people in your business, your colleagues, etc. And then just start exploring deeper connections with them. I like to use props. So can I show you a prop?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one of my favorite props to use. I've had this forever. It was given to me by an old boyfriend from years and years and years ago when he went on a trip to Turkey. And I've used this in all my retreats and workshops, etc. And the reason I love it is when we show up in the world, when we meet someone new, and even when we show up in a boardroom, we often show up like this. We show up with this like armor on, right? And when we ask someone a surface question like, how are you? What's your day like? What's for dinner? Instead of saying, how will you be nourishing me today, mother?
Ooh.
You're getting the surface questions, but this is not us, right? We actually like are all these layers. And that when we start to ask more meaningful questions, and I can share a couple of my favorite ones later, we start to get to actually know the human being. And it starts to peel back the layers. We start to create this energy of trust. So then we want to explore more about that person. And it just allows us to like remove all of these layers and all of these armors until there's more. This is the last one. We get to like what I call this one like the little peanut, right? This is really our true essence. And we're asking someone a question. We want to ask their essence a question. We want to ask a question that they're going to be able to respond from their soul, not just from their head or what they think they should answer, but who are they as a human being on a soul level?
I love that. And it makes me think, Jackie, when we ask questions, I feel like a lot of question asking is done unintentionally or more as like a societal norm. Like if I see you on the street, it's just like good manners to ask, how are you doing today? But I'm not really intentionally asking a question to learn more about you. I'm just like filling the space with things. So how important is intentionality when it comes to asking questions? Because Usman makes a good point here. Asking questions is a good practice, but it also depends upon the society we are in. There are very few people we meet who actually welcome the questions and who are really interested in clarifying. So if we're all doing this like question answer thing as a societal norm, but none of us are actually really interested in getting to know each other at all, then yeah, you're going to get questions like, how are you? I'm fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love that comment because I lead a group of coaches from around the world, and I lead them through a business and marketing and mindset training program. And culture is very, very important when it comes to questions, because I'm thinking of one coach in particular who lives in Germany. And she's like, if you smile at someone and ask them a question and you're a stranger, you will just get a strange look. She's finding it very, very challenging to create connection with people because the culture, where she is in the part of Germany that she is, this is out of her own mouth, she said people are just a little more closed off. And that is true. You know, I'm French. I've been to France a few times, and even there, like sometimes when you start to like, I'm very friendly. So when I say like hello to strangers, they're like, oh, like settle down, woman, right? So culture plays a huge part in this. One of the Can I share some of my favorite questions to ask?
Yes, please.
Well, I'm going to
Kim already stole one. What's the best part of your day so far? So I'm sure.
Yep. What's the best part of your day so far? That is, that is a question that I ask in those situations where you're just like, you can ask that to anybody, really, your children, your spouse, your colleagues. But the question that I love to ask, and I'm going to ask you this question, Tracy, is, what did you want to be when you were a little girl? What did you want to be when you were a kid? Okay.
I think about this often because then I read Chris Hadfield's book, who's the like very famous Canadian astronaut, for those of you who don't know. And I was like, all of this sounds terrible. I never would have done any of that. But kid Tracy wanted to be an astronaut. And it's been interesting now because I went on this like cool journey of like, okay, why did I want to be an astronaut? Because it's an adventure and it's places other people haven't explored, and I can like be among the stars. And it's kind of neat because I feel like what I do right now is also very much that. So I get like that same kind of, I love meeting new people as well. That's like adventure for me. And then I learn all these amazing things about these amazing people. And then I'm like, oh, it's like I'm among the stars. And I don't even have to go to the bathroom in a suit. Like all of this sounds like a big win. So that's, yeah, me with a little elaboration.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the people who are watching, did you not learn something about Tracy from me asking her a question? Like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Right? This is a question that I ask when I'm doing sort of culture building teamwork, is I get the whole team to answer this question. And it's really cool to see some people going, I wanted to be that too, right? And you're starting to create these links. And then you elaborate on that, and you did this beautifully, with how is that showing up in your work now? And for you, it's showing up magically. It's very aligned, right? It's very aligned. Whereas some people, you see this sort of the spark go from like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be this. How's it showing up for you in your life and your work now? And they're like, not at all. Right. And then that's where the self exploration and the self questions can come into play, where you start to ask yourself, how can I bring that element of that childlike feeling that I wanted to, like, I always wanted to be a teacher and a journalist and a play director and a documentary creator, all of it. And in a way, I kind of have that, right? I've got my podcast, I'm coaching, I've led retreats, like I've got elements of all of that. So that is one of my favorite questions to ask is, what did you want to be when you were a kid? I love it. Now, in terms of leadership, and for those of you who might be interviewing people for jobs, you know, there's that staple question, tell me about, you know, a challenge you overcame, or, you know, that kind of staple question. I would suggest that you turn that around and allow it to be a little more open and ask, what are you most proud of? And ask them to answer this. Like, go back to, is it like in grade 3, you remember winning a gold medal at your swim competition and you were so proud because you didn't think you would, and you practiced and you practiced and you did it. Like, what are you most proud of? And when I was doing a management turnaround for an organization here in Calgary and I was interviewing, I loved using that question because there were certain elements that I could pick up from people. Like, I'm most proud that when I was 18, I went backpacking across Europe on my own for 3 months. This was a young woman, right? Do you not think that immediately told me something about her? Right? Brave, courage, resourceful. I'll figure it out, because she told me there were times I didn't have money and I would just go and find jobs. Like, I worked on a farm for a little bit to make money while I was in Europe. And I learned so much more about her by asking, what are you most proud of, than a typical question of, tell me an obstacle you overcame. Right? So that's another one of my favorite questions.
Yeah. Oh, these are good. Well, okay, so we had a lot of people sharing, like, yes, they learned something new about me. So accomplished there. Good job. Jack. Madeline has a question. What if the other person doesn't understand the question you're asking?
Okay. So I would like clarification on that question. What if they don't understand it? Like, they don't understand the context of it?
Because I think like these questions are kind of like, they're pretty simple, right? Like, what did you want to be when you grow up? What are you most proud of? You know what's funny? Just as a fun fact, some of you might know this who watch the show a lot, but one of the things I'm most proud of is I won the Right Stuff Award at Space Camp when I was 13. And it's an award that they give to actual astronauts at NASA for like great achievements, and I have one. And it's like, still, I was 13 and it's still the thing. Anytime anybody asks me, what are you most proud of? I will say my son, and then I will say that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I just want to, while we're waiting for Madeline to add some more depth to her question so we can
Yeah.
answer it fully. One of the things I always think about these types of questions as well is it actually gives me, as the question recipient, the opportunity to explore as well. But there's a permission that I have to give myself, right? I have to give myself permission to explore, oh, how am I experiencing that nowadays? Because sometimes, I mean, I don't think all of us just sit around thinking about that. Right? We have stuff to do. We have dinner to make. We have grocery shopping lists to buy. And like we get busy doing human things. And then we don't stop to think. But when we get asked a question, it's also interesting from the recipient's point of view of like, do I stop and think and like really answer that question? Do I give myself space to learn something new about myself? Because Jackie, as you said earlier, and Thomas actually had a comment appear, if we aren't connected to ourselves, it's hard to connect fully to others. So there's also opportunities to connect more deeply to ourselves in the questions posed. And Madeline, I would actually even say in that scenario, this is making me think of the movie Zootopia. I reference Disney movies all the time. But there's a part in there, and Officer Hobbs has to go up and speak in front of the press. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I forget the fox's name, but the fox is like, answer with a question and then answer that question. So answer the question with a question and then answer that question.
Yeah.
So her example, they're like, what can you tell us about the case? And she was like, was it a difficult case? Yes. Yes, it was. And so I think in that scenario where if you're the recipient of the question and you don't understand the question, one, I would just say like, hey, could you reframe that so I could like try again? But you can also, I think there's something to be revealed, even if you decide to answer your own version of that question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Thomas loves Zootopia. Okay, someone got my reference.
Yeah. Less about confusion with context and more of content. Okay.
As in, like, you don't want to answer that question? Like, I don't want to tell you what I'm most proud of because I don't know.
I know, like, content, like, or not context, but the situation matters. Like, I would not ask the person at the grocery store, hey, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Like, I may not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I got to know them a little bit more, I would. But it wouldn't be my opening, I've never met you before question. Right? I would leave that to, what's been the best part of your day. I feel like, what we were sharing as well, Tracy, when you are asking someone that question, I mean, we've got to be active listeners too, right? And we're talking about curiosity here as well. I have made it such a daily practice to get curious about people. All I watch is documentaries and biographies. I'm a documentary addict, right? I love learning about people. I love reading autobiographies. And when you're asking someone the question of, what are you most proud of? Or what did you want to be when you were a kid? You are actually putting yourself in more of an active listener mode, especially if you're asking from a place of genuine curiosity. Whereas again, if you say, hey, how was your day? You don't really care what the answer, you know what I mean? You're not actually listening for the answer because you're already assuming the answer is going to be pretty flat. So I think that the situation you're in also really matters. Madeline, I'm still not clear, so I'm asking questions. Yeah. I'm still not completely clear on less about confusion with the context and more with the content. So do you have an actual example?
Yes, we would love to hear an actual example. Like if someone asked you a question and you didn't understand the context or content or either or.
Yeah, like when I ask someone, like, tell me what you're most proud of. I will follow it up with say, and it could be from any time in your life, right? So you're actually, what you're doing when you ask that question, the reason it creates connection is you're activating someone's heart. You're actually activating, like they're going back in time and they're thinking about different things they've been proud of. Like you're actually opening up the door for compassionate connection, right? Because it becomes a heart to heart question. And it's so fun to see people's eyes like light up when you see them almost like going back in time. What am I most proud of? Or what did I want to be as a kid? And again, you're activating the heart. So that creates deeper empathy. And as I said, that compassionate connection.
Yeah. So Andrew's asking a question. What inspires you? It's a question he asks a lot. I believe it's one you ask on your podcast, Andrew. And so, one, I would love to hear what inspires you, Jackie. But as well, how much of a relationship do we need to build with people before they give us a real answer to a question like this, right? So I feel like if you ask me what was the best part of my day so far, even if I'm never going to see you again, I would feel okay answering that question, right? Like if I reveal this to strangers, all good. Although, I mean, for me, if someone walked up to me on the street and was like, "What inspires you?" I'd be like, "Well, let me tell you." We would be talking about it. But like from that societal perspective, is there like a ladder of questioning that at least is like a societal norm that we might want to be cognizant of before we like ask the guys sitting next to us on transit, what inspires you?
Yeah, great question. I feel like bringing intuition into it, right? You know, you meet people sometimes that you have this instant connection with, and you can feel that energetically. And so you feel safe to ask a deeper question. I ask questions like this all the time to podcast guests that I've just met for the first time. But that's a different context. They're on a podcast. They know it's, you know, really about communication and connection. The term "what inspires you," here's how I ask a version of that question that might seem a little less, like what inspires me is what's lighting you up these days? I'll ask that. So what's lighting you up these days? Or what's lighting up your heart these days? I ask this to like my friends as well that I maybe haven't connected with in a long time. What's lighting you up these days? Because you're actually asking them what's inspiring them, like what's creating that energy of inspiration and spark. And it's getting them to think about like either, what's lighting me up? Actually, not much is lighting me up these days, right? Like you sometimes I get that answer. And then again, it prompts them to go into that self-reflection of like, I need to bring more like passion into my life. But what inspires me is, I think I'm like Tracy, like there's so much that inspires me, literally. Anything from the color of the trees right now in autumn, like I'm just blown away. I took a drive out to Okotoks yesterday and I was driving and I was just like staring at the trees at the same time. And it was just so incredibly beautiful. So I love this time of year. That inspires me. Coming up with creative ideas that I want to bring into the world inspires me. Communication like this, conversations like this inspires me. Gosh, I could go on and on and on. I think possibility inspires me.
Kim, you're so sweet. Kim says the love of helping people. I think you could both say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know me, Kim. Anyways.
I love helping people see a possibility for their life that they didn't think was possible. That lights me up. Like that lights me up. And I've often said to coaching clients, I will believe in you more than I believe in myself some days. And I actually mean that. And there are days for any of you that are maybe coaches on the call or managers, leaders, etc. Perhaps you resonate with that there are times that you like really care about your people, like almost more than yourself some days, right? Because you're just so giving. So I love that. That truly lights me up.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is the thing about connection too. Like when we're talking about connection, this isn't a one-way thing that we give. It's something we exchange. And so this is something that I've been experiencing the last few days. Like, and I don't know if you get like bouts of this as well, Jackie, but I've just gotten like so much appreciation in the last like 3 days, and people just sending me like random messages about, just so you know, you always inspire me. And it's, yeah, I'm like, so glad you came into my life. And I'm like, this is cool, because like, I'm similar to you. I am just like, I love I'm curious about people, and I'm like way less curious about things. And like, I'm way less, I don't care how AI works or how algorithms work or any of, like, I'm interested in people. I'm like, what makes you tick and what lights you up? And like, what are the things that are like your jam that like make you excited in a day? And I get like, I'm getting excited right now because it makes me so excited. And every person has that different innate sense of wonder, right? People wonder about different things. It's why we have so many amazing technological advancements and things, because people are interested in different things. But when we can ignite that, or even just promote in the people who naturally have it, our curiosity about people, the people who grow up wanting to be a journalist, the people who grow up wanting to be doctors, right? These people who just want to like, what is going on with you and how can I support that? And sometimes I can help, and sometimes I can just help by knowing that I'm here and knowing that I see you. It's like, I don't know. What do you think about that in terms of these like kind of natural paths that people have for their arena of questioning and being able to like tap into that?
Okay, I need clarification on that question.
So like, well, maybe let's look at it this way. Are all people innately interested in other people?
Great. Okay. So here's I'm going to answer this question with a story. And I believe that I believe in my heart that yes, we all are curious about others because we're all curious about ourselves, right? And we truly are mirrors to each other. And I'm going to go back to that question of what did you want to be when you were a kid? And it was a question I asked my mother. Okay. So my mother was 72 at the time when I asked her this. It was December of last year. She was staying at my house, and I said, Mom, what did you want to be when you were a little girl? My dad was already sleeping. We were staying up late chatting. And I mean late, like it was like 9:30. And and she looked at me and said, Jacqueline, which is French for Jackie. I don't know. I don't know. And it immediately created like a sense of pain in my heart that, first of all, I'd never asked my mother this question, right? We don't, like, I don't know. We don't typically ask our parents these kind of questions. And I said, Mom, like, what did you want? Like, what did you dream of before you had kids and when you were a young woman? And as context, my mother was my librarian growing up. Literally, she was the librarian at my school. And when she retired as a librarian, which is where another way I got my love of curiosity, because I was always surrounded by books and reading, right? My love of storytelling, which is something we both share as well, Tracy. And she said to me, I've always wanted to like dance on stage like a Vegas showgirl. And I thought, like, what? Like, my librarian mother has had this dream inside of her that she has not shared literally with anybody. And I have never asked her this question. And this was in December. In January, she was diagnosed with cancer, was in surgery within 10 days. They removed all the cancer. She's healthy now. But that spring, I was hosting my She Starts Now event, which was the podcast launch event. And I was talking about courage at the event. And nobody knew this was going to happen, but I had hired a choreographer from my mother to create a routine to the song What a Feeling from the Flashdance soundtrack. And at the event, I talked about courage and I talked about our dreams and how, like, we don't talk about our dreams. We don't ask each other about dreams. And at the event, my mother got to dance on stage in a costume in front of a room of 70 women. I then had them write down their dreams on these red Post-it notes and post it all over this glass wall. And to go back to your question, Tracy, it sparked so much curiosity in everybody. Like everyone became curious about each other's dreams. And so I think that we all are curious about others. We just have to, as leaders, spark the conversation. We have to spark the conversation.
I'm with you, and this is okay. There's a couple of great comments here. So Kim saying she saw a post yesterday, 7 questions to ask your mom. It was really interesting to think about how little I've asked her. And we all have, I mean, like, it's interesting from a parental point of view, even as a mom now, right? Like, there's a role. I'm a caregiver, I'm a nurturer, and like, I ask my son these types of things, but I mean, I'm kind of lucky because I feel like I'm living into a lot more light than other people have the opportunity to today. But there's so much when we just have the like intention of like sparking curiosity. And Madeline, actually, to come back to your question, because I think hopefully we demonstrated that when Jackie asked for clarification on my question, because I don't think she saw how I went from point A to B, but my brain went from point A to B. And then we unlayered it. So hopefully that was an example of what you're talking about. Okay, so if this is a really just a shift in us sparking curiosity and like having the intention of sparking curiosity, I specifically wrote in the dreams of others. What do we need to do? How can we do that? How can we do that, Jackie? In this world where we're so busy doing things, and I got to go to work, and I got to check all the boxes off of all these things. How do I shift so that I can prioritize time, intention towards sparking curiosity in other people?
Okay, sparking curiosity in other people. Okay, I'm going to give another example. I truly think it needs to come. We need to be the spark, right? And I very much, and I know this has happened to everybody listening, where you might see someone and you want to ask a question or you want to spark conversation, but you don't, right? You don't. And I'm going to encourage you to start practicing, like start practicing. And it could be as simple as this. I have another Safeway example. I don't know why I'm bringing up Safeway, but I was leaving Safeway and there was a woman walking through the parking lot with a big brace on her knee. And I'm having some hip issues right now. And so I was curious, like, you know, did you just have surgery on your knee is what I asked her. I'm like, I'm curious. And that is a great way of starting a question is, I'm curious. Did you just have surgery on your knee? Instead of just saying, hey, did you just have surgery on your knee? Adding the 2 words, I'm curious, before a question actually softens it a little bit. It really disarms people. And I will be honest, like I was coming up to her and I could see kind of like she was doing the side, like, what's this? Like, why is this woman walking up to me? And I just looked down and I said, I'm curious. Did you just have surgery on your knee? I'm having some hip issues and I may need surgery. And she said, no, I haven't had surgery yet, but I was in a car accident a month ago. And in the middle of the Safeway parking lot, we ended up having a conversation about nutrition and how type 2 diabetes is BS, that literally type 2 diabetes can be wiped out in 90 days with proper nutrition. I've seen it happen in the coaches that I lead, like it, because they're wellness coaches. Then we started talking about Joe Dispenza meditations, and we just had this amazing conversation. And I felt like I had made a connection with a friend, all because I had this curiosity and I wasn't afraid to ask the question, and I wasn't afraid of being rejected. right? You have to go into this without being attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Not taking it personally, right? If someone looks at you strangely and says like bug off, like, what are you doing? Okay, fine. They didn't want to answer the question. that's fine. But I think that sense of openness in being brave enough to ask the questions, that sparked curiosity in her. Then she started asking me all these questions. And as I said, it became this really cool connection.
Yeah. I think I find this, so I made this commitment a few years ago, and it was always like, if I see somebody and I like their glasses or I like their shoes or I like their bag or whatever, I'm going to tell them it.
Yes.
And so even if I'm like randomly walking down the street and I happen to love your hat, I will say, hey, I love your hat. And the number of times, one, that like puts a smile on someone's face, 100%. Two, it like breaks down a barrier. So it's not a question, but it is something that my brain says, do that. There's something my brain thinks. And so I always practice, like, if my brain thinks it, do it. If I think of somebody just like off the top of my head, I will message them. She'll be like, hey, just thinking of you today. Hope you're having a sparkly day, right? Like, there's things that each of us see. There's opportunities, Jackie, like that opportunity. Safeway, for those of you who don't know, in Canada is a like grocery store.
Supermarket. It's a
Yeah.
supermarket. Yeah. My apologies. Yeah.
We have some international gifts on with us today.
Yeah.
But there's like, that's something. It's not like there's a list of questions necessarily that you carry with you. It's just that experience sparked something in Jackie's brain and she did something about it. She asked a question. These are all things that we see. We see unique opportunities to connect with people, and we see different questions that we might ask. And that means it's just that practice of, instead of being like, oh, but would that be inappropriate? I shouldn't ask that. Just like peeling away those pieces and saying, like, I'm naturally thinking this.
Just get over yourself.
Gonna say,
right? Like, get out of your own way. And I love that you do that. Hey, I love your hat. I love your dress. And it doesn't mean you have to like stop the person and say, I love your dress, and like wait for them to respond. It could literally be, love your dress, and just keep going. And you've sparked something in that person. Literally, like something has been sparked. If you find that you aren't as curious about people as maybe you would like to be, it's why I love documentaries and biographies, because we'll see people like Maya Angelou, or, you know, there are such amazing people who have done amazing things, and people were not celebrity status. When you go back and you look at their whole story, you just think, oh my gosh, like I had no clue that that's what it took for that person to get to where they are today. And I apply that now to everyone I meet. It's like, I have no clue what people have gone through to get to where they are. Everybody has a fascinating story. Everybody has a fascinating story. And if you start to go through life with that filter, you will naturally generate and cultivate an energy of curiosity.
And this makes me think then, Jackie, too, like, if everybody else has an interesting story, we too have an interesting story. That this is something I see all the time, right? We think our experience is so bland, right? Yeah, I got nothing special. I'm kind of like, I'm this, I'm that. But every single time I have seen someone come from that place and share their story, it has held so much meaning for somebody who heard that. And maybe it was just one other person. Usually it's more than that, or at least the possibility for it is more than that. But I'm with you. There's so many sparks. And even Paula is saying, like, Great Britain is full of sparks, and we're a nation of innovators, right? And but a lot of time we see that in other people, but we don't see it in ourselves. And when we're looking at this and we're talking about questions for connection, right? This isn't me going around and creating compliments for people, because someone told me it's smart to compliment
Yeah,
people. Kind of ties into Kim's comment about like sparking
exactly.
curiosity sounds like we're genuine in wanting to know. Like, I genuinely like your dress, so I told you. I
Yeah.
like your dress. I compliment people's Lego all the time when I see it in their background, right? Like, hey, I have that Lego set, because I'm genuinely interested in that. Not
Yeah.
all people are genuinely interested in that. So, like, the question I wrote down is, what are you curious about? Maybe you're curious about the books people read. Maybe you're curious about the adventures they've been on. Maybe you're curious about the languages they speak. Maybe you're curious about their experience in high school or university. It doesn't have to be that we are curious about every single detail about someone's life, because our brains can't consume all of that information anyway. But when we pay attention to, like, what am I curious about? I'm curious. Like, I saw the lady across the street come back in a whole leg brace, and I was like, oh no, what happened to her leg? And I should just go ask her what happened to her leg, because I'm curious about it. And can I help with anything? It doesn't have to be, I don't think anyway, Jackie, that we have to overthink this.
No.
It's just more of a like tapping into what are the questions our brains are already asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love how you share when you get this like intuitive nudge to ask someone or do something, do it, right? There's a reason for that. Honor that.
Yeah.
I was in Europe last year leading a speaker and story coaching training, and I can't tell you how many people were like, I don't have any interesting stories. I don't have anything interesting to share. And literally by the end of the 5 days, like, they couldn't stop coming up with all the interesting stories they had to share. So I agree with that comment as well.
Yeah.
We all have an interesting story to share. Everyone listening, you have an interesting short story to share. We are all fascinating human beings.
And give yourself a little bit of opportunity to be fascinated by your own story, right?
Yeah.
Like, if our spark is equally powerful as other sparks, and I know a lot of people who go out and have an intention of lighting sparks in others, and like, don't leave yourself out of that equation. Let's ignite our own sparks as well. Okay, one last thing I want to touch on, Jackie. So Ahmed is saying sometimes Zoom calls, quick text messages, and busy schedules make it difficult to connect and find common hobbies or perspectives to bond over. And then also, I think when people who share your interests and personal values surround you, you can collaborate more and feel well supported to be your most authentic self. I think these comments speak very clearly to the whole purpose of this conversation today, which is not just to ask questions, but to create those opportunities for connection so that we do feel supported, so that I'm not sitting there and waiting for somebody to text me because I need to feel seen today, but that I'm making myself available. I'm also putting myself out there. And it is, I don't know. I think a lot of times the words that come to me are that it's inherently risky, but what's the risk, right? If I invite you into a conversation about the weather or what you're wearing today, and you don't want to play my game, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it is really important to explore when we're looking. If you're listening today and you're like, yes, I have the intention of asking more questions for connection, but you find that there's still some things that are stopping you from just going out and asking the questions, I think a good place to look is, am I putting too much pressure on the response of that? And do I need, this is just making me think. So like a long time ago, I had this friend, I still consider her my friend. And my boyfriend at the time was like, why are you friends? Like, you always do all these things for her and she never does anything for you. And I was like, at the time I had gone and picked her up a couple of times because she drove her car until it like literally ran out of gas, which I can't understand. Never done that. But like, and he was like, why do you do that? And I was like, because she's my friend. And because we are connected. And just because someone else can't understand the connection doesn't mean that we're not connected. And so I guess the point I'm making there is that connection is also what we make it. And we're either creating opportunities for connection or we're not creating opportunities for connection. And if we're feeling like we're alone and unsupported, what is the role that we're playing in not opening the door to being connected?
Absolutely. We like really need to take the initiative.
Yeah. And so let's wrap up here then, Jack. So what are some things from your practice, from the people that you coach, can like help us baby step into taking that initiative?
Into taking the initiative to create connection?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I've started doing, because I got into a real habit of like isolating, because
which is probably common
yes,
after COVID.
After, you know, all that's happened in the world.
Yeah.
And I am just like making it I'm making more of an effort to say yes to things and to plan things in advance. So like, okay, I want to do brunch on Sundays. So making the time to like call friends and say, okay, let's do brunch. I want to start having more like gatherings in my home. So I'm going to start planning those. And it's taking like the ideas out of my head of like, oh, I really need to connect with people more, and actually just making it happen, because I never regret it. I never regret it when it's done. It just takes that initial momentum that like you need to take the action to get the momentum going. So start even on your calendar. If you guys, any of you have like a booking system or a Calendly type system, block off certain days every week and just call it connection time. And so if someone ever reaches out and says, oh, I'd love to go for lunch with you, I'd love to connect with you, or can we connect virtually even, that you always have this like open spot that you are keeping open for connecting with another human being. And just make it a habit of like every single week, connect with another human being, and stay, as we've been talking about, stay open and stay curious.
Yeah. It's a practice, right? And I think a lot of times as humans, we're so used to immediate gratification. We just wait for like connection to be served to us. And while it might be on a like internet access level, there is something that we need to do. We need to create that. We need to, like, I have given myself on Wednesday mornings, there is another parent at the playground, and we always chat after we drop the boys off for school. And like, it's fun for me, and I can tell that she like needs it. Right? And so I actually cleared an hour in my calendar on Wednesday mornings so that we can go for tea and we can just have connection. And when we look at it from a timing perspective, I think a lot of times we're busy, right? We've got busy schedules. We all have lots of stuff to do. But how much of that stuff is really adding connection? And if we're not creating any opportunities to connect in a meaningful way, for those of you who are online entrepreneurs, you might also be doing like lead generation and things like that. Like, what could that look like if that wasn't about lead generation? What if that was about connection and everything started from connection? What type of questions might you ask in a coffee chat? What type of questions might you ask? How much more open might you be? One, Jackie, how come you haven't invited me to brunch? We'll talk about that. But like,
we did go for brunch.
Well, one time, yeah, but like more times. Anyway, but like how, like, and don't hold yourself like so accountable, because maybe you didn't think about it until you listened to this conversation. But like, look at it and be like, wow, I'm really not creating time and space in my life for connection. And
we
how
have the
might
time.
I?
We have the time. Like, honestly, like look at your phone and look at your screen time, and your phone will tell you that you're lying if you say you don't have time for certain things, because this has robbed us of so much.
Yeah. And this is like actually fun. This is another fun thing you can do. There's a thing on your phone that will tell you how, like, your average screen time a day.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. That's why your phone will tell you you're a liar if you say you don't.
And it will tell me, even on a good day, it's like 2 hours, right? Yeah. And you're like, wow. Although I had a friend whose phone said 16 hours, and I was like, dude, you need a life. But that's permission, right? Permission to reassess what we're spending our time on. And that is usually scrolling on your phone, usually not making you feel connection. So what might you do instead to create just a little bit more connection today? Oh, this was so good. Jackie, we could talk for a very long time, but before we run out of time for today, where is the best place for people to contact you if they would like to get in touch and learn more about you and what you do?
Uh, JackieDumaine.com is my website. Right now, it's really just a placeholder for my podcast. Instagram, I'm pretty active on Instagram, not as active on LinkedIn. However, Tracy's going to start changing that for me at some point. And on Instagram, I'm at Jackie, that's my name, Jackie Dumaine. But yeah, just reach out.
Awesome. And if you have any problems finding Jackie, let me know. I will send the links because I'm connected to her in all the places. Jackie, thank you so much for sharing all your insight today with us about asking questions for connection. Thank you to all of the amazing peeps in the chat. Paula, Usman, Madeline, Ahmed, Thomas, Karen, Michelle, Kim, Dan, Yasmin, and Andrew. Woo, we had a crew today. Thanks, crew. Thanks for checking out the new Monday versions of conversations, which will exist for September, and then we're changing it up again in October. So just keep your calendar up to date. And again, if this is a conversation where you feel like you want to do more learning, you want to do more practice, you want to build more habits in this arena, please don't let this be the last time you participate in a conversation about questions or curiosity or connection or compassion or any of the things that we talked about today. Get connected to me, to Jackie, to each other in the chat. This is what allows us to stay in the conversation. So if we're trying to move forward in these arenas, that we actually get to do that. Jackie, are there any last thoughts you would like to share with the peeps for today?
Nothing profound comes to mind. I just want to say thank you. I love these conversations, and I truly believe that if we all practiced a little bit more curiosity about ourselves and others, the world would be a much more connected place.
I concur. So, peeps, go out there and connect with people today. Find one person. Send them a message, give them a call, stop them at Safeway if you happen to be at Safeway, because apparently that's where connection happens.
Your photo. All right.
And you can send that to Safeway because I happen to have this comment up about Shop Safeway.
This was not sponsored by Safeway.
This was not sponsored by Safeway or Sobeys, just even though my husband happens to work for Sobeys. Just saying, Sobeys, if you want to sponsor a show, it should probably be mine. Until next time, everybody, thank you so much for your time and your conversation today and permission to do you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.